the rise and fall of Uganda's last king of Scotland. The night was thick with silence, broken only by the heavy march of boots echoing through the streets of Kampala. In the early hours of January 25, 1971, Uganda's capital trembled as soldiers took positions, seizing government buildings, communication centers, and the presidential palace. By dawn, a towering figure, broad-shouldered and charismatic, had declared himself the leader of the nation. His name was Idi Amin Dada, a soldier-turned-dictator whose reign would soon plunge Uganda into one of the darkest chapters of its history. To some, he was a hero, a man of the people, a soldier who rose from nothing. To others, he was a tyrant, a ruthless ruler whose whims cost thousands of lives. His story is one of power, paranoia, and the haunting shadow of absolute authority. Idi Amin's exact birth remains uncertain, but historians place it around 1925, in Kiboko, a small town in the remote northwest corner of Uganda. He belonged to the Kakwa ethnic group, a small community often overlooked in the larger fabric of Ugandan society. His father, a farmer, abandoned the family, leaving his mother to raise him. Life in rural Uganda was tough, but young Amin grew into a strong, athletic boy, admired for his physical power and fearlessness. Education was never his strength. By many accounts, Amin barely completed a few years of primary school and was largely illiterate for much of his life. Yet, what he lacked in academic knowledge, he made up for with brute strength, cunning, magnetic presence. He excelled at boxing, rugby, and swimming. His physical dominance would later become a key tool in his rise, earning him both respect and fear. In 1940, as Uganda remained under British colonial rule, Amin found his way into the King's African Rifles, a regiment of the British colonial army. The towering young man, already over 6 feet tall, impressed his commanders with his toughness and obedience. He served as a cook at first, but his size and athleticism quickly drew him into combat roles. During the 1950s, Amin was deployed to suppress rebellions in Kenya, particularly against the Mau Mau uprising. His reputation for cruelty began to emerge here. Stories spread of Amin using brutal tactics against suspected rebels, including torture and beatings. Yet his superiors saw him as effective, promoting him steadily. By the time Uganda approached independence in 1962, Amin was one of the most senior African officers in the army. His close ties to the British and his ability to command loyalty from his soldiers positioned him as a powerful figure in the new nation. Independence brought hope, but it also unleashed struggles for control among Uganda's emerging leaders. Uganda's first Prime Minister, Milton Obote, recognized Amin's usefulness. Obote, a shrewd politician, leaned on Amin as an enforcer, relying on him to deal with rivals and maintain military discipline. In return, Amin gained wealth, prestige, and influence. But Amin was no ordinary officer. His ambition stretched far beyond military service. He began to build a loyal following within the army, recruiting heavily from his own region and tribe. He was charismatic, soldiers adored him, civilians admired his boldness, and many saw him as a man who could embody Ugandan strength and pride. 1960s, tensions between Obote and Amin grew. Obote feared Amin's popularity and suspected him of corruption and plotting. Amin, meanwhile, watched for the perfect opportunity to strike. That chance came in January 1971, when Obote traveled abroad for a Commonwealth conference in Singapore. On January 25, 1971, Amin launched a swift coup d'état. Tanks rolled through and within hours, Amin had declared himself president of Uganda. Crowds cheered in the streets. Many Ugandans were weary of Obote's increasingly authoritarian rule and welcomed Amin as a liberator. Played the role well at first. He promised to restore democracy, release political prisoners, and bring dignity to ordinary Ugandans. He laughed heartily, embraced children, and attended public prayers. The international community, including Britain and Israel, initially welcomed him. His charisma was undeniable. But behind the wide smile and military uniform, darker intentions stirred. The man who had once been a soldier of the British Empire now saw himself as the supreme leader, answerable to no one. It did not take long for Amin's true nature to reveal itself. Almost immediately, he began consolidating power through fear. Political opponents were hunted down, tortured, or executed. Soldiers who questioned him disappeared. Judges, professors, and civil servants who spoke out were silenced. Amin ruled not with policy but with paranoia. He surrounded himself with loyalists, often from his home region, and created secret police units that terrorized the population. The State Research Bureau, his notorious intelligence agency, became synonymous with disappearances and executions. Between 1971 and 1979, it is estimated that 300,000 Ugandans lost their lives under his regime. Bodies floated in the Nile River. Mass graves dotted the countryside. Fear became a way of life. One of Amin's most infamous decisions came in 1972, when he ordered the expulsion of nearly 80,000 Asians from Uganda, most of them of Indian descent. Many of these families had lived in Uganda for generations, running businesses, factories, and shops that sustained the economy. Amin claimed he had received a vision from God instructing him to rid Uganda of Asians, accusing them of sabotaging the economy and exploiting Africans. In truth, the decision was driven by a mixture of populist politics, envy, and opportunism. First, many Ugandans celebrated, believing they would inherit wealth and businesses. But the sudden departure of so many skilled workers and entrepreneurs crippled Uganda's economy. Shops closed, industries collapsed, and inflation soared. International condemnation followed, but Amin shrugged it off. He declared himself the conqueror of the British Empire and boasted of his defiance. Amin was not content with mere power, he demanded adoration. He gave himself extravagant titles, including His Excellency President for Life, Field Marshal Al-Haji Dr. Idi Amin Dada, VC, DSO, MC, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea, and Conqueror of the British Empire in Africa. He loved grand gestures, appearing at public rallies dressed as a king, wearing medals he had never earned, or arriving at events in a fleet of luxury cars. He claimed to be a boxing champion and often challenged visitors to sparring matches. He converted to Islam and styled himself as a Pan-African and Pan-Islamic leader, seeking legitimacy from abroad. His charm was magnetic, but it masked a deep cruelty. Amin was notorious for impulsive violence. Some stories suggest he personally executed rivals or fed them to crocodiles in the Nile. He played on the fears of his people, ensuring no one could ever feel safe. Amin's rule was marked by bizarre antics on the international stage. He turned against Israel, then courted Libya's Muammar Gaddafi for support. He mocked Britain's Queen Elizabeth and offered to marry her. He praised Adolf Hitler and denied the Holocaust. His most infamous international episode came in 1976 with the Entebbe hijacking. When Palestinian militants hijacked an Air France plane and forced it to land in Uganda, Amin welcomed them, hoping to pose as a global revolutionary. But Israel launched a daring raid to rescue the hostages, humiliating Amin before the world. Increasingly isolated, Amin turned more brutal at home, lashing out at anyone suspected of ill. His paranoia deepened, and his grip on reality weakened. By the late 1970s, Amin's rule was crumbling. The economy lay in ruins. Inflation and shortages plagued ordinary Ugandans. International allies abandoned him, and even his own military began to fracture. In 1978, Amin made the fatal mistake of invading neighboring Tanzania, hoping to distract from internal problems and expand his territory. Tanzanian forces, joined by Ugandan exiles, launched a counterattack. They swept through Uganda with determination, and by April 1979, they had captured Kampala. Amin fled first to Libya, then to Saudi Arabia, where he was granted asylum. He lived quietly in exile, surrounded by his family, never facing trial for the atrocities he had committed. On August 16, 2003, Idi Amin Dada died in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, after years of illness. He never expressed remorse for his actions, insisting to the end that he had been a good leader. His body was buried in Saudi soil, far from the land he once ruled with iron and fear. For Uganda, his legacy remains one of trauma and recovery. Generations still remember the fear of speaking openly, the sudden disappearances, and the terror of living under a ruler whose whims determined life and death. Idi Amin's story is not just the tale of a dictator, it is a reminder of how absolute power corrupts, and how charisma without accountability can destroy a nation. His rise from humble beginnings to the pinnacle of power seemed inspiring, yet his reign became a nightmare.